Today I'm talking about trauma and happiness with Tatjana Simakova. Tatjana is a counselor, psychotherapist, and art therapist from Ireland. Hello, Tatjana, and very welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Nicoletta. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast.
You're very, very welcome. I'm really grateful for your time. So, Tatjana, why do we get traumatized?
Why do we get traumatized? It's a very good question, but I don't think anyone have a clear answer to that question. When we are born, I think simply just like with the physical preconditions, we have emotional preconditions. Okay, and if we are placed into an environment that is not good for us, whether it is any sort of abuse, it can be once-off or consecutive abuse. When we're placed in this kind of an environment, some people react to it in a way that they form some sort of defense mechanisms, and then in their adulthood they're able to park it and move on in some way. Some people develop defense mechanisms, but then as adults they're not able to park it and move on, and then we see a lot of depression, anxiety, and all sorts of mental health issues developing for that person.
Mm-hmm. But why is trauma happening in the first place? What's been your life experience? Why is abuse happening? Why is neglect happening? Obviously, around the other adverse childhood experiences, we kind of have an understanding when parents are not emotionally available, when they break up, when there's a lot of displacement, when they move, and we have, they carry us with them. Plus illness, maybe in the family, all sorts of losses. So we understand that bit. Life unfolds, life moves. But what about the neglect and the abuse that is directed at the child?
I think the initial trauma, again, it's like talking about what came first, the chicken or an egg, in a sense that a parent that is, say, abusing their child, right, or they are emotionally unavailable, there is a reason why they are that way, and that is because they have experienced their own trauma. So from the start, that child doesn't have much resources, right, to learn from their parents, because the parent passes on their own trauma to the child by being emotionally unavailable or abusive, either verbally or physically. And the child learns coping mechanisms from their parents. So if the parent doesn't have healthy coping mechanisms, healthy coping skills, they cannot pass it on to their children. So, and that's where the generational trauma is coming from, right? One parent passes it on to their child. That child grows up having unhealthy coping skills. They're passing on those skills to their children. And at some point, someone has to stop and say, okay, I am going to stop this generational trauma by working on myself, by working on my mental health and on my coping skills, and by developing healthier coping skills in their life. I believe it's going to take more than one generation to fix this emotional trauma and pass on healthy coping skills, healthy defense mechanism to the next generation.
Lovely.
And going back to your initial question, where trauma comes from, I think it comes from unhappiness from within you. Because if I have poor coping skills, I can't think about happiness, there is no space in me for anything that brings joy in my life.
Tell me a
Right,
little bit more about this. When you talk about coping skills, I'd like to hear a bit more. What's been your learning in your practice?
Well, I can bring an example. You know, if, for example, I grew up in an abusive family, right, where maybe my dad was physically or emotionally abusive to me, I will grow up with an inner belief that I am not good enough, and that it's okay to treat me this way. It's okay maybe to shout at me. It's okay to put me down. It's okay maybe to hit me, right? And I grew up, I will be looking for the love of my life, right? And I will automatically be driven towards someone who will in some way make me feel exactly the same way as I felt in my childhood, put down, belittled, maybe even physically abused, right? And for me, it will be the norm, because I grew up thinking that it is okay to treat me this way. It's okay not to respect me. It's okay to put me down. It's okay to belittle me. Okay, and of course, I will meet nice people along the way, and nice young men who will probably treat me nicely, but I will feel uncomfortable because I don't know what it is to be treated nicely. And what I will say, no, it's quite boring for me. This person is not for me, right? This is not love. And when I will meet someone with a lot of drama, with a lot of hurt in this in the relationship, I would say, yeah, that's good. This is real love. And I can't leave that person. I know, probably logically, I will know that the relationship isn't good and it's not healthy, but subconsciously I will say, but this is love. Because somewhere in the childhood, this kind of treatment became equal love. Okay, so that's what I will take as love.
It does
So
make
this is
sense.
one example of how traumatic experiences shape us as a grown-up person.
Yes, and shape our beliefs, our core beliefs about the world, our mindset, shape the way we interact with others, shape our expectations. What do we expect in a partner or in social relationships generally? It's very interesting, and I do see this in my work as well. So, Tatjana, you work with adolescents and families.
Yes.
That's your specialty. Tell us a little bit more about what you're learning from your practice in terms of transgenerational trauma. In this day and age where we find ourselves today, post-COVID, in 2022, what are adolescents suffering from? What kind of trauma you see in them that's been passed on to them from their ancestors?
I see a lot of children that are not able to cope with any kind of difficulties in their lives. A lot of the children are not able for emotional upheaval. In a way, I think we probably moved from one extreme to the other extreme, and I'm going to try and explain these. Where before physical punishment was okay, right, and it was the norm. Now we learn that physical punishment is not good for our children, right, and we shouldn't be doing that. So instead of being somewhere in the middle, and I don't mean physical punishment, right? What I mean, letting our children experience any kind of difficulties in their lives, right? We're trying to protect them completely and put cotton wool around them anywhere they go. So what I see these days a lot, that parents take all the issues away from their children instead of being there for the child as they experience some difficulties in their lives. I hope I'm saying this clearly right now. So as a comparison, it would be even our immune system. So if we are living in a bubble with no viruses, with no microbes, right? And the minute we will get out of that bubble, we will get sick and probably die straight away, because our immune system is not, didn't have any opportunity to get stronger by fighting those viruses and microbes, right? Same emotionally. A lot of children do not get opportunity to get stronger. So they're not taught that, yeah, being sad is actually okay at times, right? Being angry is okay. Being anxious is okay, right? The message that they're getting is don't be sad. Don't be anxious. Anxiety is not okay. So we need to run away from it, right? But the minute we start running away from our emotions, and you probably know it, the emotions are running after that, after us, and become stronger and stronger. So I think our children at the moment are somewhere, in that race away from the emotions, but we need to catch them and say, it's okay to be sad, and we need to be sad sometimes, right? And we need to go through any difficult emotion instead of trying to hide the emotions.
Wow, this is so beautiful. I mean, it's such a complex topic. You can look at this from so many perspectives, the way we do parenting, the way we've learned to parent others from our own parents, the influence that we get from outside today with social media and so much information. It's quite hard to actually filter what is good for you, what is working for you, what is aligned to your values, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's quite impossible, especially for a child whose brain is not quite ready for the information that they can gather on the internet. And they have to live with that. They don't know how to process it. They don't know what to do with the information, but they're burdened with all of that. I think they're becoming adults a bit too fast these days.
Yes.
And, since we touched on the topic of internet and social media, if you think about it, in our days, we didn't have the internet. And if there was a bit of bullying happening in the class, say, right, the child had an opportunity to go back home and have a rest, right, and relax there, where now there is no relax. It's, the internet is after the child all the time, 24/7. I think they don't have this safety then. If we don't go as far as traumatic experiences within the home environment, even going back home, they can't say I am safe.
Yes,
right? Because the friends are with them. Absolutely, the friends are with them all the time. If we add on to that the traumatic maybe or unhealthy home environment, it's even more trauma, right? So the child is not feeling safe anywhere at all. And they are constantly in that fight or flight mode. And the fight or flight mode takes a lot of energy out of us. So we need to be constantly vigilant, what else is going to happen? Who else is going to emotionally attack us, right? When do I need to protect myself and fight back?
And in that chaos, when the child is developing and trying to just understand what's going on, maybe get a sense of their own identity, that's the last thing that they need to live in that unpredictable environment. So we're talking about something very, very serious now, because in the real world, there is trauma. We absorb it from our families, we absorb it from the school, the peers group environment, and so on. It's happening. And even if it's not lived trauma, something that we experience ourselves, then we capture it from there. I'm really sorry. I think there is a lot of vacuum here. I have the window open. It's a bit hot. But they absorb a lot from what's going on with our friends, with the extended family, in school, everywhere. And then now we have the virtual world where they spend a lot of time.
In some cases, it's probably helping. In a lot of cases, it's not helping. If you think about it, the way we get information, right? As babies, we have nothing, right? We have no understanding of this world. And then as we start growing, we look at our parents and we get the information. This is okay. This is not okay to do. This is my parents' belief system. I'm going to take it in. Then we go into a creche or into a childminder, and we take their belief system and their kind of what is okay, what is not okay to do in this world. Then we go to the school and we meet other children who have gathered their parents' belief system, and we share belief system, and we put it in our pot and mix it and stir it, right? And then come up with something new, go back home and try it out. Is it okay to do at home? Maybe not. And that's where a lot of parents feel a lot of pressure, saying that my child is constantly pushing the boundaries, right? But that's their job. That's their job to push the boundaries and check, is it okay? Oh, it's not okay. I'll try it again. That's how they learn. But if the parent has emotional trauma themselves, a lot of the times they're not able for that push. A lot of the times they're not able to withstand that push, and they attack because they see it as attack on them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times what I hear is parents would say, but he knows he can't do it. Right. Oh, I told them so many times it's not okay to do it, but they keep doing it. Right. They keep acting out, or they keep banging the doors, slamming the doors, or they don't listen to me. And again, you mentioned before being emotionally unavailable. And I think a lot of parents are emotionally unavailable for their teenagers, especially teenagers. And I say that to probably every parent that comes into my office, that despite the fact that the teenager tries to push you away and show that they don't need you, this is probably the most important time in their life, and they need you the most. But in a very invisible way, where the parent is there but not involved in their life, and they're ready to catch the teenage when they make mistake. So I think the parent becomes a goalkeeper, right? And they need to catch these faults and mistakes without telling their child anymore what to do and how to do and what they should be doing and how they should be thinking. And for a parent, it's a very difficult transition. a lot of parents are not ready for that. A lot of parents are rebelling against that as well, and they want their baby to be close with them still, and they want their baby to stay a child for as long as possible.
Yeah, such a difficult transition for all parties involved, really. I mean, children, for children, they are challenged themselves in everything. They are trying to discover the world. They are trying to connect with their parents on a different level, not the baby parent. The parents on the other side, they expect obedience. They have their own rules, their own agenda, their own expectations.
Their own belief systems, the way it
Yes.
should be or the way it shouldn't be. And the teenager has their own pot of the beliefs that they gathered from everywhere. And now they're saying, no, I believe this should be this way and not that way. And a lot of parents just don't understand it. You grew up in this house, you should have exactly the same belief systems. But sometimes this is not the case. Sometimes it's different. And when that happens, the child feels not connected. Right. And I do believe that when we learn how to connect to our children, this transition, this teenage rebellious years, they don't have to be as rebellious. When they feel safe, listened, and understood, they have nothing to rebel against.
Yes.
Right. So I do believe it can be quite a smooth process. But we need to start listening to our children and their needs. I always say there are no bold children. There are children whose needs are not met. And, you know, they don't have words how to say it. They don't understand probably themselves what's happening and why this is happening. And so the first they think is, I'm going to rebel. I'm going to bang the door. I'm going to do something else against my parents' will.
And
because I am independent.
Yeah, you go.
Because I am independent, I am almost an adult, right? I'm not yet. I still need the safety net, my parent, right? But I want to start learning how to make my own decisions.
Yes, I want to feel free. I want to have autonomy. I don't want you parents to squash me anymore. I want you to give me space and value and respect me and acknowledge me and my pain and my ideas, how weird they might sound to you. But then you have the parents on the other side that are triggered themselves. I mean, the you know, their previous versions, you know, the adolescents in them are triggered themselves. There's a lot of transference going on in there, in that power dynamic, isn't it? And their traumas now, the parents' traumas are reenacted, and the pain is coming somehow under the surface. And if they don't work with themselves, they don't have this understanding what's going on with them. There's a lot of projective identification in there, because you mentioned defense mechanisms, that some are healthy, others are not in terms of coping. I think when the parents project onto the children dissatisfaction with their behaviors, just because they know there are some facets in them that they are well aware in somehow at an unconscious level that they have manifested themselves when they were younger. That's when they try to heal aspects of their past. But if they don't really stay engaged with the, you know, with the awareness, with this kind of inner work, they might not really get it on time. I know that it's been a struggle for me with my 33-year-old son when he was an adolescent. I was very young. I didn't know what I was doing. So I've learned a lot from my own experience, and I'm learning from other people's experience as well. So now we see that obviously we will carry some sort of pain and trauma from the past, whether we remember it, whether we, you know, provide space for that to be acknowledged and healed. That's another matter. And in the way we behave with our children, with all of the others, because this can be extrapolate it, isn't it? It's not just between children and parents. It's about human relationships, yeah?
Yes, I would compare it, any kind of relationship is a relationship, and it doesn't matter whether it is a friendship, a romantic relationship, parent-child relationship, or, any other possible relationship. It is a relationship.
Right.
Our children, they are not ours, really. They're not part of us, right? The minute they're out of mommy's belly, that's it. They are separate entity. They are a person who has their own wants and needs and their own personality, and we need to understand that. And a lot of people, unfortunately, think that this is my child. I am going to shape my child the way I want it, and the way I wanted what I probably didn't get in my own childhood.
True. So good.
Right. And
So,
I'm going to add, something that I was missing, but that child, my child, doesn't probably need it. Right. So we're missing their needs then.
yes.
But of course, we're doing it from love, right? We're doing it because we love our children so much, but forget to listen to them and their needs.
There's always good intention, isn't it? We know that. But
Most
sometimes
of the time,
it doesn't go right because we miss that little aspect. And if this can go into any kind of relationship, and the trauma that we experience, the way we relate with others, the way we think about ourselves, our pain, our worries, our anxieties and sadness, whatever it is, our memories, our stories, that negative self-narrative that we carry with us, our own story. If we share this with others, we are obviously at risk of unconsciously, unintentionally traumatizing all of the others and dropping some of the weight that we carry with us onto the others. And now, what is trauma doing to us? You can start from maybe adolescence or generally, talking about the parents that carry them with, carry the trauma with them. What is trauma doing to us? How do you see it manifesting in our lives?
I think trauma, I mentioned this already, right? I think trauma stops us being able to see happiness. It stops us being able to just be, instead of constantly being in our heads and thinking maybe about the past, all the negatives that happened to us and ruminating about it, or worrying about the future, and thinking about possible worst scenarios. People with trauma, I don't think they're able to do it. And if they're not able to do it, of course, it is going to affect all their relationships in their lives, right? Because all they will see is negative, is something is there to catch them out. Someone is there to be against them. So they are constantly in that fight or flight mode. And when we are in a fight or flight mode, it's very tiring, it's very draining. And a lot of people are complaining with headaches, being constantly tired, right? So we get physical symptoms of trauma as well as a result of that, if we carry it for too long. Working with people, I do get a feedback, I didn't have my headache for a long time, or I don't remember when I had a headache last. So, and again, it happens very invisibly, right? The change happens, and the person might still think that I haven't changed, right? I stand still in pain, but something is being released during therapy. How do we do it is by releasing the anger, any other negative emotion that is being stored in our body.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you mentioned how the trauma affects the body. because I remember, researching and reading Sigmund Freud's when we all started. This is how we started. We look into his work and we appreciate his contribution to the science of psychotherapy today. But in one of his books or papers at the time, Civilization and Its Discontents, he spoke about the suffering of humans. That was about 100 years ago, in 1950s or something. Like the suffering is coming from 3 different sources: from our bodies, from the external world, referring to nature, but also from all of the other people. And I think we spoke about that, but that's quite a limiting, quite a narrow view, isn't it? Because now we know very well that the way we relate with our mind, the way we listen to what's going on in that negative trail of thoughts that is never stopping, and the way we react to life, not creating the space between the thought and the response, that's as well one of the most re-traumatizing experiences that we give to ourselves all the time. And then it's the spiritual disconnection that you also mentioned. You mentioned connection a couple of times. When we don't look beyond this body and this mind into the emotion, into feeling really connected with all of the others, and we isolate. And probably you're familiar with the work of Bessel van der Kolk, the one that wrote, it's an American psychiatrist. He wrote The Body Keeps the Score. Yes, The Body Keeps the Score. And he spoke very nicely about how the body remembers everything. Any kind of trauma, even emotional trauma, it has an impact on the body, and how survivors of trauma tend to feel very unsafe in their bodies, and how he works with them to make them feel somehow at ease within their own, physical space. That was really interesting. So now that we know that trauma deprives us from happiness, how do you work with clients? How do you work with people? What's your style? What's your taste? To help them
what my style and taste.
Heal the
I
trauma.
think if I can describe my style of working in a very short, maybe in a few sentences, right? So I meet the client, we assess where they are right now, right, and where they want to go. And then now I'm talking when I'm working with an adult. And then if needed, and again, most of the time it is needed, we go back to the childhood and tease apart their experiences. And then slowly come back to the present, right, and start changing defense mechanisms that they don't need anymore, that maybe they developed in the childhood, and that they help them to survive their traumatic childhood, but they don't need those defense mechanisms anymore. They are not helping them, they're working against them. So we change those, we change unhealthy habits. And of course, we work a lot on thought processes, right? How to control negative thinking. Work on that, and then see what we can do to start working on their future. So, of course, the way I explained it is very linear, and it never works like that in therapy. And we would be jumping from one to the other, and then maybe back, and then forward again. But more or less, I always involve the past. I always look into the future. And that's my style of working with my clients, and I find it works for me, it works for my clients. I do meet the clients that I deserve.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the clients that will benefit from my style.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, Tatjana. I work in a quite similar way. I think most therapists obviously use this kind of journey back in time so they can gather the information that they need, so they can offer their clients the platform to explore the past, what's been painful, what's been difficult for them. I feel that in a way, acceptance is a big step for trauma survivors. I'm a childhood trauma survivor myself, so I'm going through my own journey, obviously, in life, not just as a professional, but as a client in therapy myself, and a seeker at the same time. And I know how difficult it is for clients to make the unconscious conscious, to go there, to be daring, to be, you know, courageous enough to actually confront their past, to confront what's been challenging. It's not an easy journey. I think Jung said at some point that people would do everything to avoid, you know,
The pain.
avoid the pain, avoid facing their own souls and getting in touch with who they really are, what really resides there, home within themselves. And he said, but he also said that you don't become enlightened by, you know, looking at the light, but by making that darkness conscious. So we need to do it. It is part of our job. And I think acceptance is one of the most difficult steps for trauma survivors, acceptance that happened, and it can be changed.
And we can't change the past. We can't change the parents that we were born to, right? Or
Yes.
the childhood that we experienced. And I always say, we'll always love our parents deep inside. Right, we cannot stop loving them, even if they were very abusive towards us. So we need to learn to separate. I love that person as my parent, but I don't agree with their behavior. I don't agree with what they have done to me or towards me. And when we learn to separate it, there is no hole in our heart. We can still love them and not agree with their choices. And I think when a client finds a way to do it during the therapy, you know, it's very liberating. It's freeing for them. You know, you said you have your own trauma. I have done it myself. I've gone through all sorts of therapy until I started feeling free myself, and until I became who I needed as a teenager. I needed that person who would encourage me, who would say that all your emotions are okay, everything that you are experiencing is normal, and you know, there's nothing wrong with you.
This is what we need. Sometimes it's a matter of time, getting ourselves ready for that leg of the journey, because we are on the journey since we are born, really. But obviously, the journey gets a bit more serious as we advance in time and we grow with age. And I agree that this ambivalence is very difficult for us all to handle. Because the abuse and trauma most of the time happens with people that are very close to us in our close circles. So how do you live with that ambivalence, that you had a wonderful relationship with that person for a while, and then the abuse happened, and then there's been good times again, and then maybe the abuse came back, and so on. So it's not easy for a child or even for an adult to look back and make sense of that. But it is very possible. I see it happening. I've done it myself, and I see it happening with people. So now on the last minute of our podcast, Tatjana, what is your message to all of those people that are listening? They carry some old buried trauma and they haven't worked on it properly with a professional. What would you advise them to do quickly in a few steps?
In a few steps, I would advise them to definitely seek someone who they will trust, right, and who they can work through their trauma. If they're not at that point where they're ready to face into their deep-seated trauma, I think to work with their thoughts would be the first step, and to work with negative self-talk, negative criticism. That would be the first step, and freeing this constant chatter of negativity.